Welcome everyone, we're so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and joining us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis. Welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. We ask that you please note that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice. It is essential to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any medical concerns, diagnosis, or treatment. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and any actions taken based on the information presented are at your own risk. We are so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and join us for a brand new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Let's watch what this evening's podcast is all about. Freedom has a cost, and not all wounds are visible. While many celebrate the fireworks of Independence Day, others are just trying to survive the echoes they can't silence. PTSD affects nearly 1 in 5 veterans who served in Iraq or Afghanistan. Nightmares, panic attacks, emotional numbness, guilt. It doesn't end when the war does. And for far too many, it feels like they're still in battle, long after they've come home. Did you know that approximately 7% of all United States veterans will experience PTSD during their lifetime, compared with 6% of the general adult population? Female veterans, around 13%, have had PTSD, roughly double the rate among men. Male veterans, approximately 6 to 7% lifetime prevalence. For Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, about 15% of them experienced PTSD in the past year. Nearly 29% had PTSD at some point in their lives. For Vietnam veterans, the prevalence is about 10%. World War II and Korean veterans had a lifetime prevalence closer to 3%. Deployment really increases PTSD risk, as veterans who deployed are about 3 times more likely to develop PTSD than their non-deployed counterparts. In the United States today, according to the Veterans Administration, 14% of males suffer from PTSD and 24% of females suffer from PTSD. And you know, it's not only PTSD. Veterans can also suffer from military sexual trauma, or MST, as 1 in 3 female veterans as well as 1 in 50 male veterans report MST. PTSD often co-occurs with other mental health challenges such as substance abuse disorder, which affects about 20% of veterans. 28% of veterans have experienced suicidal thoughts. On this week's episode, we sit down with an amazing U.S. veteran living with PTSD, having served honorably in the 101st Airborne Division. Tonight, he shares the moments that haunt him, the strength it takes to ask for help, and how he's finding hope, one day at a time.
Plus, as always, we'll have the expert insight from psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis on what PTSD really is and how healing is possible.
If you're a veteran or love someone who is, this is a conversation you need to hear.
But connection does, understanding does, and compassion can save lives.
Here are our hosts, Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis.
Well, howdy, everybody, and welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast, where each week we explore the struggles, the strength, and the stories that shape our mental health journeys. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson, and as always, I'm joined by a co-host and psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about
you?
you?
Good show? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm psyched about the show that we're going to do today.
Me too.
We have a really, really good guest, and I think it's going to do really well. And it's very tough, okay? And it's an important topic because, as we said, tomorrow is Independence Day, okay? July 4th. Everybody here in the U.S., we honor the courage, sacrifice of our military veterans. We have a barbecue. People look at it as a day off from work. But we're trying to do so we hope each and every listener understands, no matter where you're tuning in from, I don't even know what country you're tuning in from, the veterans who serve our country and your country, they do so by placing their life on the line so that you can have a free life. Remember freedom to enjoy, even if it's to protest peacefully. comes from veterans who have fought major wars in the hopes of making our world a better and safer place. Now, I know I'm speaking for Dr. Davis as well as myself, that we only have the utmost respect for anyone who served in the armed forces, especially here in the United States. But
Absolutely.
today we're going to bring attention to a battle that many of them continue to fight long after they put the rifles down, the uniforms come off, the wars are over. And that battle is PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'm going to give you a little stat here. It's estimated that 1 in 5 veterans who served in the Iraq and Afghanistan live conflicts live today with PTSD. Now, for those who cannot do the math, that's 20% of veterans that who have returned are suffering. 20%, that's humongous. 1 in 5 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at this 20% of them, that's a lot of people here.
Yeah.
And there are invisible wounds that these people suffer, often hidden behind that strength, discipline, and silence. Because, they got to be that strong soul. Okay. They got to put on that air of being strong, but they're suffering inside. And today's show, you're going to hear from a man who's walked down this very road. He's an honorable memory, someone who's previously appeared on the Your Life Matters show back in a different incarnation. And we're going to explore today what PTSD is and how it affects veterans and their families. And most importantly, what help and hope looks like to them. So whether you're a veteran, whether you're a loved one, or someone who simply wants to understand and support veterans, okay, this conversation is going to be for you. Now, a very powerful topic, Dr. Davis. So let's get right into the heart of it. For those who didn't watch the first episode that we did on PTSD and that are listening and do not fully understand or, don't know what exactly is PTSD, can you explain to our listeners what it is and how it shows up, especially in veterans?
Sure. So PTSD is basically a emotional and biological reaction to a traumatizing event. So it's and it can some of the misconceptions about it is people think, well, if it's well, when I tripped and fell and was embarrassed in front of everybody, it's not like my life was in jeopardy. I shouldn't have trauma over that. And I mean, but trauma can be anything. Trauma is relative. So, now with veterans, a lot of times it's extremely, it can be extremely extreme as far as PTSD goes, because a lot of times they're actually dealing with combat situations, and so and that usually manifests itself as like nightmares, flashbacks, intense anxiety, hypervigilance, difficulty sleeping, feeling numb or emotionally detached from others. And that's what PTSD
A lot of them
really.
suffer those flashbacks in their sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, if those even remember when we spoke to Dave, who was the law enforcement officer that we spoke to about PTSD, it's the same thing. They constantly suffer, these flashbacks. All of a sudden, something, just a little noise or even something on TV is going to trigger that for them. And most people don't realize, they see, John Smith at work, who's this, strong, rugged guy, very focused and everything else. I don't realize sometimes when they get home behind the closed door, what sometimes their wife and children have to deal with from that. I mean, how does it affect them
With family? I mean, if you think about it, with family, think about what makes for a healthy relationship: trust, safety, being able to be transparent, knowing that people are going to protect you. I mean, if you think about, an ideal family life, and then think about what, people would experience in the military or things of that nature. I mean, it could be scary. If I'm in a situation where I'm basically, told don't trust anybody, you can only trust us. Basically, we're all in this together. And then I step into a different situation where the environment's totally different. going to cause problems. And, something I always think of is like, even animals can experience PTSD. You know, we've have had dogs that were rescues, and have been abused. And the thing is, it's like it takes a while for them to understand, like, because their brain, when they're abused, their brain learns people hurt me. When I see people, I'm gonna get hurt. Well, obviously, an animal is going to try and defend itself or get away, and so it takes some time, and it really is a period of adjustment. The problem, especially for somebody in the military, is those survival skills are going to be so ingrained. And I mean, and I don't know. I've never served in the military. I've worked with a lot of veterans, in my years, but have never served myself. So I'm not speaking from experience, but what I can say is that I've never met a veteran that was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder for no reason. And what I mean by that is, if someone, and this goes for veterans and everybody else, if someone is experiencing post-traumatic stress, it's not because they're crazy. It's not because they did something wrong. It's because their body and mind are struggling to adapt to these changes. If you take a dog I was just going to say, if you take a dog that bites a person every time it comes in the room, if it's being abused, well, that would make sense. That's a survival skill but if you take the dog out of that environment and put it in a safe home and it's still biting everybody because it doesn't know, it's like, well, the only thing that changed was the environment, and that's kind of what happens is a veteran is in yeah, go ahead.
Let me get them before they get me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what with dog and stuff that's been abused, or even with a veteran, they're not going to put themselves in any kind of, that scary position. Remember Dave even talked about, we were joking about how you sit in a restaurant, what you can't sit with your back to the door. Okay. Because you got to get them before they get you.
Yeah.
And an animal, same way, who's been abused, and that's all they know is abuse.
Yeah, it's that hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, in a particular environment, that hypervigilance could be the difference between life and death for me. I mean, so it's PTSD is a real thing because our brain is like a computer constantly snapping and, piecing things together, making connections, etc. And if what I become used to for a period of years is I kind of have to sleep with one eye open, why? Well, because I could be in danger. Somebody could come up and hurt me. Like if I have to live that way, then it's not going to be real easy to turn that off,
So how do they? I mean, what do you try to do in therapy to try to help turn that off and to try to help them live a little more normal life?
I think a lot of times, giving them an opportunity to talk about, what has happened. A lot of time, what I found with most clients, and I'm being real general here, so no one online attack me. I'm being very general. I'm not saying this is gospel, okay? But what I've seen most of the time is that people just need someone to hear their story, and they need someone to hear them and hear what happened to them and to help them process that. And a big part of PTSD can also be, things that happen that are beyond a person's control, but had to happen for one reason or another. You know what I mean? So, but I think that giving them an opportunity to tell their story, and be heard, and then also connection is everything. And I say that for any condition. It doesn't matter if you're a person who's dealing with cancer, if you're dealing with PTSD, if you're dealing with addiction or anxiety, any of those things, there is a priceless amount of healing that you can find by simply connecting and speaking with others that have been through similar things. And so for PTSD at the, VA, for example, there's the Wounded Warrior Project, or there's, there's all sorts of peer-to-peer programs. Those are so powerful, and they're not therapy. Like it doesn't have to be therapy to help. If it helps, do it. I'm saying that as a therapist. So if meeting, another veteran that has been through a similar thing and is living their life in spite of PTSD, or have found things that can make the PTSD better, then by all means talk to them, learn from them. We're all special in our own way, but we're not all so different that there's no similarities. And I think that a lot of times, especially when a person's suffering from an ailment, be it PTSD or something else, we feel so alone. Because what is wrong? Why am I scared of, think about that. If you had PTSD, why can't I sleep all of a sudden? What is wrong with me? I can do other things fine. Why am I having difficulty with this? And it is not something that you're doing wrong. It's a problem that has to be addressed.
See, I think places like the VFW halls or the American Legion halls are great things, because if you
Absolutely.
go into any of those things, okay, yeah, some people are having a drink, but a lot of them are playing pool together. They're
Yeah.
ping pong and stuff, playing cards. But they're also, if you listen to them, they're talking about their experiences in
Yeah.
war, and it's so much easier for them to talk to someone who's been in war, than it is sometimes even talking to, say, someone like you, because the person knows that they've experienced, they've been in a foxhole, they've been shot at
Yeah.
all along, and they try their best to explain that to you. Whereas to John, who's a veteran, John knows.
Mhm.
John's been in that hole before, and John probably has a few stories about being in the hole that he's going to talk about. And I think that's actually a good way, like you say, they got to talk about it. It's great to talk about things to other people. And, as we'll see probably, coming up, I'm sure the same thing we probably said with our guest, when people going to talk. So, I'm sure he'll answer all of that when we talk to him. What is, it's probably my last question on this before we go to our guest here. What should family and loved ones look for? Because a lot of times these symptoms may not be obvious. May not be as much as waking up in the middle of the night screaming or sweating and stuff. What should a loved one, whether it be, husband, wife, and let's be real about this. PTSD actually affects women veterans, female veterans,
Yeah. Oh,
more than
absolutely.
it affects male veterans.
Mhm.
Like the opening film that we had, we showed here, was talked about the prevalence with women is much higher than it is
Yeah.
with men. What should we watch for? I mean, is there little things in their actions that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah. I think that, first of all, if it's someone that you're close with, if you are just picking up that something's off, I always say trust your gut instinct. If something seems off with someone that you care about, ask them about it. Like, worst thing that happens, no, I'm fine. But at least you've opened the door for them to talk about, or to tell, to talk about what's going on and try and find solutions. Outside of that, there would be general like avoidance, the hypervigilance, seeming paranoid, maybe withdrawing more into their self or isolating, sleep problems like we talked about, having bad dreams about things, or even sometimes substance use can be a sign of,
Hmm.
something deeper going on. So if you're noticing that the person's drinking a lot more than normal, or it's always good to look into that. But I would tell anybody, if you are experiencing PTSD, you're not alone. You're not insane. Like this is a real problem. And it happens for good reason. It's called our fight or flight response. That's that is an inherent part of us. That is one of the oldest attributes of human beings through time. And trust that gut instinct, because if you think something's off, just ask about it. And I would rather, I always just thought to myself, because I would ask my kids about it. hey, is everything okay? Or something like that. And, um, sometimes they would get mad. Everything's fine. It's like, well, I'd rather have a conversation about you being mad about me asking if you're okay too often than you be afraid to talk to me if something's really going on, you know?
Correct. And there's the many times with the people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol, people look at the addiction
Yeah.
more than the underlying cause of the addiction.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, we got to get you clean and stuff." Well, we can get you off the alcohol, we can get you off the drugs, but if we haven't dealt with what the real issue is that made you start doing the drugs or the alcohol,
Yeah.
then you're just going to go right back to that further down the line. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of the treatment that Dr. Phil always talks about that all the time. When it said we're going to work on both issues at the same time.
Oh, yeah. So dual diagnosis or
The dual
co-occurring.
diagnosis. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
And actually, so in the addiction field, and I'm really happy to see this, there really has been a shift where more and more the different curricula that treatment programs are using, et cetera, is paying a lot more or giving a lot more attention to trauma because addiction in and of itself is a traumatic experience. So you really do have to treat both, especially so for all clients, but especially with women, because a lot of times the an addictive lifestyle is very traumatic. And addiction takes people to places where they don't want to be, and they experience things they would rather not experience. And so it's very rare that people come out of addiction unscathed with no trauma whatsoever. So I'm really glad to see that change happening.
Yeah, they go down tunnels that they really don't want to walk to.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. Well, folks, this is one of the highlights for me doing this show with you. We get to bring on a special guest every now and then, and tonight is no exception. See, one thing is talking about a subject like PTSD and veterans, but we need personal experience sometimes for people to truly understand and appreciate what the disorder is truly all about. And our guest tonight's a very special person, as I said. Anyone that knows my guest and has spent any time with him knows he's truly special. You see, I have this unique way of looking at people. I try to hide inside them, see really deep what's going on, get a feeling for who they are, and not just the persona they exude to other people, but really who the person is. And I'm going to tell you one thing, and he's sitting right here, he's looking at us. This man is a gem. I mean, really, he's got a heart of gold. And the person I'm talking about, as you can see on the screen, is Santiago Cirillo. Okay, he's an actor, an author, a podcaster, a veteran, a guitar maker, a husband, a man of faith, a father, and so much more. He's an Army infantry veteran, having served with the 101st Airborne Infantry Division, which my dad also served with. And he's won medals and more for his service. Now, he's also a martial artist, screenwriter, producer, entertainment entrepreneur. I mean, that can go on and on. It makes you feel welcome and special every time you see him. I mean, go down to any Paracon or any event that he's at, and you'll walk away 2 minutes later feeling you knew this guy for years, and he's like one of your best buds. That's special about a person. Now, many people might also recognize that face, not from the post office, but they'll recognize his face from the television show The Walking Dead. Okay, he was also in the successful TV show Nashville. Been in so many movies, including the award-winning film Rosalia, which is one of my favorites. Okay, with Chris Bagan. Now, I'm not going to say any more about him except your Life Matters podcast truly welcomes Santiago Cirillo to our show. Santiago, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, yeah, buddy. What's up, man?
Well, it's great to have you, and you know, we're talking about veterans and PTSD tonight. And first, I want to start off by thanking you for your service because,
Appreciate it.
I think, a lot of people, like I said in our intro that we came in, to the show, tomorrow is Independence Day, 4th of July. And I don't think too many people actually realize or think about the veterans during the day. Yeah, I know we got Veterans Day, Memorial Day, But Independence Day, the reason we're celebrating Independence Day is because of people like you, okay, that served our country and put their lives on the line for us. And, you know, I think we forget that. I think it becomes like barbecue, or they go, oh, great, I don't got to go to work tomorrow. It's another holiday. And I really think veterans, I'm not saying that because my dad was a veteran, he was with the Rockazans and stuff. I just, so much, my heart goes out so much to them. That's it. Tell us about your upbringing, where you were born and raised, etc.
Well, I was born in a small country out there in the way south, past the Bermuda Triangle south, uh, Fajardo, Puerto Rico. So I was born there, but I was raised in Lorain, Ohio, right there off the shores of Lake Erie, the most haunted water in the United States. But I went to lived in Lorain, and of course, I after graduating high school, I went to college a little bit in Columbus. Kind of goofed around as a college student, and decided to grow up, and I joined the military. I was in
Okay,
the
I'm going to
U.S.
stop you
Army.
there. Yeah, I'm going to stop you there because we're going to go into your military service in a
Yeah.
second here. Okay, but yeah, it's strange you talk about Lake Erie and the paranormal because we just finished doing a three-part series on the paranormal. And yeah, a lot of the stuff that I experienced personally, I don't know if you know that I did paranormal for 48 years. I was a paranormal investigator. Still do it here, but I miss it. That stuff's in your blood after a
Hmm.
while. I mean, I miss roaming the hallways of Pottstown. I did their website. I still do their website for them, and yeah, I really miss that stuff. So, in a few minutes, I'm going to get into your books, okay? Because one, and especially, really is phenomenal. But and it fits in with the theme of the show too, which is why I'm
Yeah.
going to use that. But tell us a little bit about your military service. I already mentioned you were at the 101st Airborne Infantry Division, but now pick up what your story you were going to tell us there about your Army days.
Yeah. So after I pretty much wasted my college life, I was goofing around and I dropped all my grades down. Um, I had a hard time as a kid. I was raped when I was 9 years old. I was abused by my father. I was beaten up by popular kids. The whole deal. I was thrown in closets and lockers, and I mean I could go on in my childhood, and finally when you get out of high school, you see a different world, different stuff where it's more open for you. And you didn't have to deal with the high school history. You dealt with the new beginning. So, of course, people thought either I was funny and I attracted a lot of women or whatever. And I just thought, like, oh my God, I'm finally popular, kind of deal with my own crew. And I just forgot about college, and I blew all my scholarship money. I blew a lot of things that I worked hard for. And I was at a break area in school, and this recruiter came up to me and was like, popped out a cigarette, and he was like, "You got a light?" I was like, "You got a contract?" And told him I had to just fix my life, man. I had to fix my life. And next thing you know, I was out at Fort Benning, Georgia, out in Georgia, clay weather, heat, exhausting, burning third quarter of the sun, Georgia, and Fort
Oh, it's
Benning.
hot.
So very,
Best place to
so
go do
hot, your
basic training,
shadow
right?
didn't want to come out. I guarantee you.
I mean, you
But
must have
yeah, I
loved
was
doing
in.
basic training there.
Oh, it was crazy, man, because I still had a cocky attitude, and I became a man, literally. I became a man in basic training. Um, and it got too serious, man. It was seriously thing. I thought I was gonna go, let me do this army thing, get out and go back to college. Well, um, didn't know how the world turns, right? So you go to basic training, and then you get interviewed by this lieutenant colonel, and ask me questions. Do you know how to speak Spanish? You know how to translate? You know how to write it, and all this stuff. And I kept saying yes, yes, yes. And the drill sergeant was like, "Word to the wise, you don't really need to say yes to everything, you know." But I get orders from the president, and next thing you know, man, they just saved me news at basic training. Like, we got good news and bad news. The good news, you're gonna spend Christmas at home. The bad news, you got 3 days after to come out here to Panama. I had to report to my duty station. Of course, I was at third of the 502nd uh, in Fort Campbell and 101st Airborne. So I was third of the 502nd Infantry out there with the Strike Brigade, and I ended up, being in Panama doing a real world mission with Navy SEALs and Marine recons and four-star generals and the whole deal, man. Literally hit the fan, and I was a cherry private, just learning and being part of a major part of the mission. And then I grew up, I stayed in the military. I did some time, and then I, got seriously injured, and then I got out and tried to adapt to the world. I literally tried to adapt to the world. I couldn't, a lot of my friends um, got out and went back in. And I don't want to make it sound like prison, you guys. I mean, it's just the terms we talk, the way we talk.
Mhm.
But I was on my way out. I never took leave. I never wanted to see people. I was, my whole life and my mindset, I couldn't adapt to civilian life, so I never took vacations and all that stuff. So I grew all my days. So I got out of the army almost 4 months prior to my actual ETS day, and trying to adapt. And a friend of mine was getting back in. He worked for Gibson Guitar in Nashville, and he was like, "Hey, man, I talked to my boss, and they rather hire another veteran than go through a process of hiring people and all this stuff." And I ended up working for Gibson Guitar once I got out of the military, about 2 months later after I got out, and
Now,
I
if I
could.
remember from the last time I interviewed you, tell us some of the people who you made guitars for.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had to put me as an adjuster, and it was weird because I was too fast. We had to sand 300 guitars in a week. I was doing about that in 2 days, and they moved me, and finally they made me be an adjuster for all the stars. So I got to do Kid Rock's guitars. I do Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top. I had to do AC/DC. I did Ace Frehley guitar. I
Man.
did stuff. These are for people that I actually made it and gave it to them. Lenny Kravitz, Flying V's, SG's, a lot of the big wig stuff. I did BB King's Lucille's. I did a lot of stuff
Wow.
for the CMA awards and everything, man. Toby Keith. I remember doing a guitar for Toby Keith, and I was still um, fresh out of the factory at home, and I turned the CMA awards, and I was like, "Hey, this is my guitar." I just freaking gave it to him. So I mean,
see,
stuff like that, man.
see, I see
Yeah,
Eric Dr. Davis's face there, and that's how I was when the first interview that we did
Yeah.
about the book. Okay, he's
yeah.
a musician also, just so you know,
Oh,
Santiago. He's
nice.
a drummer,
Yeah,
so yeah, a guitar
Yeah.
player.
that's how I learned to
Yeah,
play guitar in Gibson.
Yeah.
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 One of the
Well, I
most
mean, that's
talented people I've ever met through Gibson, but the worst place to work for.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but look at the piece on your resume.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean,
yeah,
it was a great moment. I ended up doing Chet Atkins guitars prior to his death,
mhm.
and then end up doing a special guitar that's at the Hall of Fame. I mean, I mean, when I say I'm an adjuster, I literally created the whole guitar. So I get a a painted piece of wood. I drill the holes. I do the
Wow.
soldering for the electronics. I put the screws. I mean, completely build your guitar. Put the knobs, then straighten the neck, do the bridge, the whole 100%. It was a piece of wood, and I put it together for you. It's soldering and everything. Like I'm literally building you a guitar. And then I tune it up, they shine it, and then they put it into a bag or they'll put it into a case. The neck will tell me who's it belong to. It'll tell me it's like Kid Rock wants this by 8 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, Kid Rock can wait a little bit. I just got in. But yeah, that's how it worked, and it was pretty cool. Some guitars I decided to carve my name in it. But yeah, it was a great experience. But it wasn't enough for me because I was so wired to try to stay in that, when you're in the infantry, man, we don't sleep that much. So I ended up going to school at night, studying law at night. So not only was I building guitars, I went straight to from work to go to school at night, come home at 2 or 3 in the morning to get up like at 4:35. This is hour drives back and forth to go back to Gibson, repeat the whole process. And I did that for a great handful of years, man. So it was really crazy.
So your PTSD, did it start like right when you came out of you know, when you left
Um,
and going to Gibson?
it was because I couldn't look at people in the eye except if I knew them. I could be me unless only when I knew people. But strangers and focusing on what I did, it was just a whole different mindset. There was times where I have a conversation and I was daydreaming the whole time. It was weird. It was just a weird process, adapting to it. And then I got into law and worked for a law firm, and then I did freelance law, paralegal stuff, and then I was watching a commercial and it asked me if I wanted to be an actor. You can learn to be an actor. You can learn the entertainment business. Da, 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 da. And I literally did that. Went to school for business and entertainment, and pitched myself around and got picked up with like Dakota Fanning's agent or Talent Trek
Wow.
in Nashville. And my career took off with less than a year, man. I was on Fox, USA Network, Lifetime, TNT. And it all helped with the laws too, the tax break laws where it went to the South. So instead of hiring an actor in LA, they're like, we got Santiago. He's just 2 hours away. Let's just get Santiago. And then my name started popping up, and I started getting constant gigs and started, I was that guy that never denied anything. I did auditions, I did background, I did gigs to learn the atmosphere for free. I did stuff for free, and then it just build up, and I
You
get that
did,
call.
do you feel like you did what you loved and the money took care of it, like, and the money showed up? You know what I
A
mean?
100%, 100%. Because look, man, we live in a life that we can't afford. I always knew that. I got a lot of discipline in the military. I was saving money in the military. I grew up in a bad ghetto ass freaking lifestyle where I promised myself on me and cockroaches will never be roommates again. Um, and I had the whole deal. My mom suffered from cancer, and my dad's issue alcoholism. The whole, and I just would never do a U-turn. And one of the big things that I saw through even my popular athletes growing up watching is they blew all their money. They're super rich, and 3 months or 3 years after retirement, or they blow a kneecap or whatever, they're done. It's it. They're done. And everything is not there no more. So I decided to make sure I wasn't in debt. I worked very hard to pay all my bills, to make sure I never owned anything. And then by the time, I was midway in this career, I'm 15 years in it now, midway into it or early stages into it. Um, I was, not debt free, but we live off car payments and mortgage and loans. I didn't have none of that. I own my house, I own my vehicles, I own my property, all that stuff. Any investments I do, I was very careful how to do it. And to the point where the money started coming in like crazy for um, entertainment. It kind of
Yeah.
freezed me out. I had to call my agent. Was like, "Hey, I got this check from Fox Studios, and I thought I already got paid." They were like, "Those are called residuals." And I went,
Residuals. Yeah.
I went, "Oh, really? I keep getting
The
money?
best
What?
kind.
What?" I'm sitting here in my
Yeah.
underwear looking at a $3,000 check, and I'm going, "Well, I didn't do anything." So and then it got to the point where I knew I had to invest and work the system. So once I got into that, I was still not in my full form. I mean, since then I got out, I was, attempted suicide numerous times. I wanted to get away from things. I get calls from friends that were military committing suicide or in bad overdose of drugs and died. And I mean, I could go on with those stories, but it got me in a point where um, I needed a way to comfort my mind so I could just not listen to all the voices. So I got even deeper into, I wouldn't say deeper because I was like already, I was smoking pot just to comfort my soul because, and I didn't want to use it as an addiction.
It's a crutch,
I didn't want to
right?
use it heavy like what they show on TV. It wasn't like that. I'll roll something up and take 2 or 3 hits and put it away. It wasn't like I had to smoke it every day, every life, and I had to just get away. So I started smoking more and more and more to keep my mind away. That's where it got me where I didn't want to be myself for a while. And then it got to the point where I got so involved in myself that I started trying to find a way out. I was like, yeah, I'm doing acting, I'm doing this. I got my daughter, I got a son, I got my wife. I'm not in debt, but why am I sad? Why am I sad? So I had to clear myself out, and I started drawing on hats. I started putting "Your negativity will not break me" on a hat. "Your life is worth living" on a hat. Live life, follow your dreams, be you. I mean, I could go on and on the amount of stuff that I did with a Sharpie on a white hat that I bought at Goodwill or bought at Dollar Store or whatever. And it got the message through. People were like, "Hey, I love your hat." And I'm going, and I forget that I did this for me, not for you,
Hmm.
and then it controlled and helped and support. Then I started drawing and painting and art, and then got me more comfortable with my artistic talent in entertainment, where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I do in entertainment to support mental health awareness because I want people to meet me. I want to meet the people that are going through the same stuff or even worse than what I'm going to, because I dealt with it and I want to be more comfortable with it. So now I use the world of entertainment to give me 5 minutes to tell you that your life is worth living. And it takes my story and it adds their story. And then, I mean, I could tell you numerous times I'm at a horror convention, paranormal convention, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's talking about mental health awareness." But it brings the crowd.
Hmm.
I had kids lie to their parents to say, "I got to go use the restroom." And they come and talk to me, and say, "I try to commit suicide." These are freaking from 9-year-olds to 17-year-old kids that just came to me, parents, couples, everybody just
Yeah.
started and they bring their story and they start crying to me as a stranger or as a fan of Walking Dead. And then their story that motivated them with my story and their story to like, "Hey, look what I'm doing." I get it all the time. They're like, "Look what I'm doing now. I'm drawing," or I joined this union thing. And I mean, it just grows and grows and grows. And people don't understand that, we're fed with negativity when we wake up. You watch the news, all you want to know is the weather. And then next thing you know, 13 dead here, 15 dead here. And then you live in Tennessee and I don't want to know what the hell's going on in Bombay, Egypt. I don't even know if the place exists. I don't care if they have a freaking mosquito virus. I just want to know what's going on with the weather right here.
It's part of the reason why I don't watch news anymore. Yeah, I use my phone app for the weather because you're right. I mean, there's nothing. I was one of those people that every morning got up, and the first thing I did was I'd go to like Fox News or something like that on my phone,
Right, right, right.
and no, you don't need that negativity. I mean, really, I don't need the negativity.
Right.
And I'm sure Dr. Davis, can probably sympathize with some of the stuff he was saying of people coming up to him and, with
Absolutely.
problems and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what Santiago made me think of when you were talking about that was that's the most amazing thing I think that happens with any type of recovery is we can actually become a beacon, that like is flashing like, "Hey, the shore's over here, you're not alone. You come this way." And it's, like they say in 12-step fellowships, it's about attraction, not promotion, and that's a true example of that. So that's all. I mean, seriously, that's awesome, man. And just on behalf of mental health professionals, thank you for using the platform for something so good because everybody can relate. I mean, we all have issues. That's the big secret, the big reveal. No one is perfect. We all have problems.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you're willing to take a platform and like to lean into that and own it, people listen to that. That's awesome, man. So thank you.
Well, that's actually a good sort of a question. Why do you think so many veterans don't seek help?
I
I mean,
think
I'm sure a
because
lot of them realize that they're dealing with PTSD, but is there like a stigma still, with
big time.
seeking help?
Absolutely. And I would say, and Santiago, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say even more so in a military culture where it's about strength and like obviously, veterans that I've worked with or veterans that I know, they band together and they have each other's back. I mean, like no one else, but still there's there's that fear of opening up, being seen as weak, you know, um, and I think I'm glad to see that things are starting to slowly transition to where society as a whole is starting to see like, no, you know what? People are fighting for our freedom, and that costs them. It costs them emotionally, it costs them physically, it costs their family. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, and I'm glad that we're starting to acknowledge that, what, we need to take care of folks. When someone gets harmed, protecting me, the least I could do is help them. That's
I
that's
mean,
my
come on, if
thought.
you even remember when we spoke to Dave, the police officer, remember Dave said the same thing. You'd want to go ask for help, but like in his case, if he said he had a problem, the first thing they say is, "Give me your gun and your shield."
But one of the
And
things we talk
probably the
about
same
in
thing would happen in the army, right? If
yeah,
if you went to your captain or to one of the lieutenants and say, I have a problem right now, it's just driving me nuts. What would they have done to you?
I don't know.
Santiago,
We
what
we
would they have done to you if you went?
Take a medical vacation right here, and this is
Right.
who's going to
Hmm.
talk to you. You talk to a psychiatrist. You don't get involved. You get, it's almost like taking the paintbrush off a painter, and that's pretty much what happens. And then you fall in more depression, and you end up and you either self medicate yourself, and then you either medicate use over the medication, or you try the whole deal, the whole thing with depression with military is that we have a standard, and we're definitely involved with that every day. We get trained to live a life that beats the odds, guaranteed. So when people say I had 7 hours sleep, we can sleep for 3 to 4 hours and have to be energetic like we had 7 or 8 hours sleep. You know,
yeah.
um,
Hmm.
where when we for example, I can't change my eating habits. People stop eating to watch me, and I'm going, what? And they're like, because we were trained to eat now and taste it later, and I can't break that habit. I can't break the habit when I do these entrances to these conventions and everything, and I got this eagle eye that makes sure there's nobody that's trying to pull something.
Yeah.
When I sit in a restaurant, I'm facing everybody. I mean, there's
When,
things
when,
that you can't break them habits, and you try to tell yourself or try to put into yourself to trust other people that don't know you and say, look, I'm thinking of suicide, help me. And immediately they think you're weird. They think hey, you need to be over here and see a doctor here and there and all
yep.
this and that. And then you're moving around. In the military, you're moving around like a checkered piece. When in civilian life, you could get a doctor. You could sit down and grow a relationship with a
Right.
doctor. Since I was in the VA, since I've been out, I have yet to see a physical doctor for the last 7 years. I would say 15 different doctors, The only one that stayed around is my psychiatrist because I told them I don't want to. They were like, "Well, we got to give you a new." I was like, "No, you're not. No, you're not. This is what I want." And I bitched and complained. And my doctor works for a commercial now, and she is getting paid through the VA with one veteran, um, uh, one veteran client, and that's me.
Hey,
You know,
fantastic. I mean, it should be that way, though. I mean, those are some of the things. I mean, this is a whole nother rabbit hole, which we could make tons of series on, but
right,
just
right,
the red tape that's constantly put in front of access to mental health services or behavioral health services that are desperately needed. And the problem is people say, well, why won't these practitioners take insurance? Or, well, there's really good reasons for that, that because it, I'm going to, my clients that had Medicaid had the hardest time accessing treatment when they should be able to, that should make it the easiest, you know.
right, right.
Um, Something I was going to say would just, and then we can move on. But you made me think of in therapy a lot of times, like in men's groups, we'll talk about what we call the man box. We talk about stereotypically what's a man. You're tough, you don't show emotion, you don't ask for help. I mean, a man. The example I use is from the film Rambo, when he cauterizes the bullet wound with the knife. Flames the knife and goes like that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
talk about, okay, how realistic is that? He's like, it's like, man, if that was me, I'd be like, oh, it hurts so bad. Touch it again. I mean, that, like, let's be real.
Yeah.
But if I acted like that, even though that would be totally normal, you guys, as my friends, would be like, oh, dude, hey, get back in the man box, dude. You're acting weak. You don't want them to think
Right,
you're
right.
weak. Come on. I mean, and so in therapy, that's especially with men. I mean, it's across the board, but I think especially with men, it's those roles. In order to heal, we have to kind of go against a lot of the things that we've been socialized to believe. It's like, why isn't it okay to ask for help?
Dude,
Why wouldn't it?
we live in a conveyor belt of life. We're trained to go to school, get a high school diploma, go to college, get a degree, and work for other people, work for other
Yeah.
major companies. That's what we're trained to do. You see it. That's why they keep kids in sports so they could be trained. Either you're going to college or you're going to go to the NFL or Major League or NBA or whatever. Those are companies. That's corporate America. When you become an entrepreneur, self-minded, self-control, and decide, hey, I'm jumping off this conveyor belt and I'm going to create my own universe where I could create a company. I could create my own sports league, my own sports channel, my own inventions, my own this and that, whatever it may be. And then you're looked at different. But people don't see the hustle. People don't see the whole mindset of someone being happy. They don't see that. Like, there's a guy that works at UPS for 40 years, the most unhappy soul because he goes to work to complain.
Yep.
There's people that do the same kind of work, but it's their company, their time. They deliver in their SUV. They're delivering packages in the SUV. Happiest souls in the world.
That's so
And
true.
people don't,
Yeah.
they don't see it. They just don't see it. When you have more control of your mind and soul, you feed it what you want it to feed, and you have no remorse or no scare tactics and no fear, because fear is what controls us all. No fear in saying, look, my name is Santiago Cirillo. I was raped when I was 9 years old. I was beaten. I was bust. I lived in garbage cans and dumpsters. For food, for toys. I have no problem talking about that. I have no problem telling about my military and what else. And people look at me like, oh my God, they feel it. They know it because it's the world that hides that from you. And you
Yeah.
finally get to meet me and you get to say it with open arms. Yeah, man, my dad used to beat me. My mom did this. I was a heroin addict. And all this communication helps souls, helps a lot of people. I'm not that person that takes a selfie because I'm giving $10 to a homeless person. I'm
Yeah.
not that kind of attention guy. But I have to, it took a while for me, for friends and survivors that I helped out. It was like, dude, you need to tell your story. You need to tell them how you helped me, and it keeps going on. I help people that were homeless, help people that were in addiction, help people that were going to commit suicide the next day. That's through me, through saying, hi, yeah, hello.
Yeah. Now, if there was one thing that you would wish people would understand about veterans that suffer from PTSD, what would it be?
That we're not weird. We're not a disease. We just got a little shook up and we need to be balanced again. Um, Treat us like we are the love of the world. If you treat us with respect, the love of the world, we will understand more into opening up for everybody. That's the problem. It's like we got 22 veterans a day dying of suicide. We got thousands of veterans are homeless, and then we still spend billions of dollars in revenue we get for Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July. There's people going to spend thousands of dollars to blow up plastic, to put gunpowder and make the sky
Hmm.
shine. There's millions and millions of dollars of that. There's same thing with Veterans Day. Yeah, veterans get this discount. They treat us like a market. They treat us like a billboard. They treat us like the guy outside waving, "Hey, come get this car wash. Hey, come in. We're that guy. We're that
Yeah.
person." You know, if it's truly supporting veterans, I shouldn't be paying taxes. I shouldn't be having trouble having a doctor that will follow me for the rest, whether I live in the fucking planet of Mars or whether I live down here in bum lost here in the corner of the world. I should have a doctor. I should have treatment. I should have a confidence in a country that would give me the right to do what I need to do to be a better human being in life and in society. But excuse my French because I go off
No,
sometimes. But
but it's interesting because you think that that philosophy that corporate America has taken has caused the problems we see today with some of the younger generation that have zero respect for veterans. Yeah.
100%. There's a lot of people. You know what? Think about this. We are so poised in learning what the world is giving us and not researching and learning it for ourselves. So we'll burn a flag because we're pissed off at the government when that flag doesn't stand for the government. It stands for we the people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you go on and ask me about certain political things, I say, why don't you go ask your government? You voted for them. Go ask them. Don't ask me what my opinion is. I'm not going to go there. I don't want to separate
Right.
myself because of doesn't match your opinion. I don't want to talk that. Let's talk about how we can help homeless people. Let's talk about how we can help domestic violence, how we can help people get a roof over their head. Then we could talk. But I don't talk politics because it is part of that corporate atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
Well,
battle, and you're in between it.
the reason we don't talk about politics on here, Dr. Davis and I talked about that a number of times, and we don't want to get into specifics of politics. But I just think that you're right, because if the people got together and say, hey, the government's not doing A, B, and C, let's put it that way, but we as a people can get together and still accomplish A, B, and C the right way, like you say, helping the homeless. There's nothing wrong with going out. You see, when I lived in New York City, there was an office that my company had. I remember 44th Street or something like that in Manhattan by Lexington Avenue. And there was this gentleman that was there every morning. He was a homeless gentleman who was always on the corner of this office. And I was an auditor, so I would only go there like once a month. But whenever I saw him there, especially during the winter, when I went to get myself breakfast, I got him breakfast. What was it, $3 out of my pocket? And I would bring it to him a hot cup of coffee, a nice, bacon, egg, and cheese on, roll or something like that.
Yeah.
And we were talking. He was a highly intelligent person. He was also a veteran. Okay, and because of different things, this is where he ended up, and it's a disgrace. I've been down to the VA in Cincinnati. My father-in-law used to go to the VA there, and we used to take him there, and he'd go, for some treatment, and I'd be outside, and the veterans that were outside, and I would just watch just to get medication. Some of them would sit there for like 7 hours before the medication was ready, and it's like, are you insane? Okay, what is wrong with the system? The general's waiting. How hard is it just to, even Walmart doesn't make you wait that long. So,
The way it
there
goes,
is
man.
systemically we have a problem, taking care of our veterans and acknowledging our veterans. And like Dr. Davis said, I think it's slowly starting to change. That we need to be aware of that we didn't just send you over to fight, but that you came back not only proud to be an American, but that you came back with problems, from being over there fighting. And we need to start acknowledging and dealing with that. So what would you tell another veteran that's listening right now that might be suffering in silence?
I would say you have to create a circle. You have to create a circle. You have to go and reach out to those friends, those people that family is not always blood. It's not blood. It's people that love you and care about you and truly understand you. Create that circle where you could call at 2 in the morning, where you could call in the middle of crisis or something in your mind, and you could grow that circle. Get involved with your peers. Get involved. Look, Comic Cons, conventions, Paracons, or whatever it can be, get involved with it because those are the people that are like you. Those are the people that will listen to you and sit down and get in a great conversation about mental health, about, yeah, I went through this. Yeah, I'm going through this. Same thing with veterans. Go into a place where you can get involved with people, your peers. There's definitely a lot of facilities that are veteran friendly, that are all about veterans and helping them out. And it's locally. There's communication within your own town and your own community that will help you. Organization for veterans, stuff like that. You have to look and research. You can't wait and sit down with a gun in your hand and waiting for that opportunity or you're gonna die. That's you can't think that way. There's a lot of great organizations, a lot of great people that will network and build your circle, that your comfort, where you don't have to walk with your head down, where you can just walk straight forward and understand that that person is going to love you, that person will take care of you. You're not a burden. You're not a burden for calling at 2 in the morning. You're not a burden for freaking always reaching out and showing up during lunchtime at your friend's house. You are not a burden. You are a citizen and a hero. And no matter whether you were in the military for 1 year or you retired over 20 years, you took that sacrifice. You took that opportunity to defend this country. So, be wise, be strong, and understand that you have more power than you think to live your life. And it will continue to grow in a positive atmosphere where the negativity will become more of a silence and more control.
Now we're going to, if you will look when you're watching this video in the description, there will be a lot of links there for veterans that are seeking help. We will have live links and stuff that you can click on, phone numbers you can call. You know, there is help that's available for people. Now, Cynthia, I'm going to switch gears very slightly because we have you on the show and it'd be sad not to talk about the rest of your career that you have going. Um, it's rare we have someone that's worth talking to about all of that stuff too. Um, let's first talk about the book. Okay, A
Yeah.
Veteran's Home. Now,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I reread the book. I read it. Well, yeah, I keep saying this, but back in 2022, I had one of the incarnations of the Your Life Matters show. I had Santiago on. Yeah, there's the book. I had Santiago on, and we talked about the book. That's actually what I had you on the show to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hadn't read it since 2022. So I went back and read the book again this week, when I knew this was the show we were going to do.
Nice.
I think I
Nice.
even sent you the link, didn't I, Dr. Davis, for the book
Yeah, I
as
believe
well?
so.
Yeah. So let's talk about this book, okay? Because it's a very easy book to read. Okay, I mean, it's not like one of those like 300-page
Yeah.
books that you're reading forever. That simplicity I actually like, but it's real and honest.
Yeah.
So, what is the book about, and who was it written about?
So I took a lot of my military brothers and sisters. It's gonna be hard for me. Ooh. I took a lot of my brothers and sisters and put them in one character, including myself. And it's about a soldier who did everything possible in life and had a tragic moment in their life where they just wanted to walk away and wanted peace so they could get their mind together and wanted to know what is the purpose of living. What is the purpose of living? You go through all these missions and wars and you come home and you're looking for happiness and part of the happiness dies and then you're trying to just go away. And he didn't choose to be homeless. He just needed to be homeless. Um, it wasn't because of being poor or anything. He just needed to get away from life. And during that life, he bumps into people who doesn't know, but kind of changes their life. He's helping people without knowing it, finding his purpose, and ends up coming back into the town where his family in town where his family and the town's going through kind of a different change. A small town community. They own this farm. The farm didn't make any money, and it's losing its. They're going to lose the farm, and they need people to help. And come to find out, he kind of, you know, tells people what's going on, and finally, the people he helped, the veterans, end up being his workers and farm workers, and of course, there's a lot of different things that are involved with it. Of course, the guardian angel, which you later find out about that. Um, but all the names are my real friends' names. Um,
It's an excellent book. Listen, folks, okay, I'm still, and I told you this back in
um,
2022. I'm shocked that this has never become a movie.
yeah, we're trying. We're
I
trying.
mean, I
We try to
really
raise
am.
money. Yeah,
But I mean, it's a movie, and I don't watch too many movies. This is definitely a movie I watch. Okay,
yeah,
it really, I mean, he's homeless for 10 years. Okay, everything that's happened to him during that time when he comes back, and it fits right in with what we're talking about today, because he was definitely suffering PTSD right after he got out of service.
Yeah.
Like you said, he had to get away from it. That's part of PTSD. Am I correct, Dr. Davis? That's
Yeah,
part of the
absolutely.
PTSD is he had to escape from everything that was happening around him.
Part of what I think people really when it comes to PTSD, and we talked about this in a previous episode, Steve, but really what we're seeing are survival skills from a particular environment. The only thing that's changed is the environment. So if every time I hear a loud boom, I need to duck and cover, and I learned to do that because it happens over and over and over. And you actually, your body, your brain creates a survival skill based on what happens. But then when I'm not, if I'm not at war, I'm not in the desert, then a lot of those things that I did to survive become maladaptive. There's nothing weird about that. I mean, really, if you think about it, the only thing that has changed is the environment. And yet we're treating people like they're, insane or crazy because that environment affected them. That's just so unfair. That's so unfair.
yeah. That's
Now,
why
one
I kind
thing,
of wanted this book to do that because Hollywood expressed veterans as crazy, revenge, shooting everybody, martial
Yeah.
arts, breaking necks, and everything. It's So I try to make it simple by telling a story of all of us that we went through. I mean, even the part where I had to ambush, that's a real ambush without the graphics, a lot of different things I put in there, but the whole mindset was that you're not alone. The guy thought he was alone and he wasn't alone. And the only reason I get teary-eyed because I work very hard to tell the story of all of us into one character, and at the same time, you know, um, a lot of them committed suicide. A lot of people in them book that's named, especially Jonathan Booker, who was my best friend and military brother, and it was 6 hours, 6 hours time difference. I text him and called him, and he's doing great, having fun eating hot wings with his sister. 6 hours later, he's dead. And he killed himself. And what do you do but blame yourself? What do you do but blame yourself? You should have seen it, Santi. You knew the messages, and you think that's why everybody trips out when these Hollywood stars and all these people that have a great laughter, great communication, a lot of energy. Me, I open up all the time. I tell people, look, I cry every day. I'm hurting every day. It's just that I know when depression hits, I know how to fix it some way, without hurting myself or others. And that's the kind of deal that I try to tell people through this one book, 101 pages, 101 pages. Never thought it would end up being 101 because I served in 101st Airborne. I never thought it would match that way.
I
You
never
know,
thought of that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. This book has created a lot of different things for me. The ghostwriter for it, because I wrote this book 5 times. It was a script, a movie script, and I had to put it down a little bit, and I had a ghostwriter to help me. The ghostwriter was dealing with domestic violence, dealing with some crazy amount of PTSD, and I get to talk to her, and I didn't know. I was just linked up. Hey, this person will help you write your book, and couldn't find out she was a victim, and helping her out. Then you fast forward 7 or 8 years later, she hollers at me and emails me and say, you need to listen to this woman. And this woman was bullied and she dealt with PTSD, and she was just trying to follow her dreams to breed horses and become a horse breeder. And she was winning contests and everything. And she was being attacked because it's a lot of money. People spend a lot of money to breed horses. And here she's doing it from the front yard. And then I listened to her and connected with her. Next thing you know, we raised over $100,000, and I've directed her movie of her life story. And that
Wow.
connection got her hooked up to Hallmark, got her hooked up to big companies and overseas companies. This is in a matter of a year right now that this just happened. I just finished
Wow.
directing her life story, and it connected with other people. And she writes for Hallmark now. And she goes, you're good luck. You're gonna direct all my movies. I said, it doesn't go that way. But if it's something that I'm touching people with life, I want to do it in the right way. And you take opportunities. And it all started with me opening up.
What would you say
I
to somebody? I run into a lot of folks, and when we talk about like finding our purpose in life and those things, and you're obviously someone who has really, really made an effort, and it's obvious to find your purpose. You know what I mean? What's your advice to folks that just feel lost? And like, I know that there are a lot of people that say, I want to help others, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do. But what's your advice?
Find their talent. And they're like, well, I don't got no talent. I don't have nothing. You have talent that's in your bloodline for generations. If researching your bloodline brings that artist, that dancer, that singer, that writer, that communicator, that leader, that Congress, that mayor, that governor, there's your talent. The problem is you're so much involved in the world where it's controlling you, you never have time to sit down, have a cup of coffee, and look at some great view of mountains and trees and landscape or whatever to say, oh my goodness, I could paint this. I could write a song about this. I could create this. It doesn't matter if it's a small talent, because it's a seed. Once you plant that seed, a lot of these kids are like, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. I always tell them, there's your problem. You want. don't want, go be.
Gonna be. Yep.
And then when they plant their seed and they're like, yeah, I'm going to school to be a doctor. Next thing you know, it grows branches. Yeah, I'm going to be a doctor, but you know what? I want to build doctor offices, or I want to build this. I want to create this medicine, or I want to create this procedure. Or you never know where that branch leads you. You know that one seed grows many branches, and people don't ever want to try and test the water because of fear. Fear, fear, fear. The fear is bred into us. There's fear in odds. You know what the odds are for you being an actor? You know what the odds are for you paying for medical school? You know what the odds are? Everybody puts negativity, but I pray for you. Hope it happens. That is the stuff that gets fed. That is the stuff that we eat. If we control our mind and soul and said, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to have the biggest hospital. I'm going to have this. I am going to be an artist. I am going to do this. I'm going to have the biggest art school. I'm going to have my own paint. I'm going to have paint brushes under my name. That is how you need to think. It ain't about thinking that you're going to be a king in Narnia. It's all about being a king of your village. Everybody is royalty. Everybody's royalty. The problem with is you keep concentrating on that little village in your kingdom that always hates you, that always dislikes you. I mean, we deal with it in politics, we deal with it in religion, we with it in our workplace. There's always that little corner of people that are negative, and then we concentrate on that. Instead of concentrating on that corner of the negativity, we need to concentrate on what we want to do to make us happy. Research your life and you will see it. Promise you.
That's the secret to every successful entrepreneur. What you just said right there. Okay, I know, even for myself, when I left corporate America, walked away from a six-figure job to start a web design company. Everybody was like, maybe you should see Dr. Davis. There's something wrong with him at that point. What is he doing? But you
Yeah.
know what? I just look back. I enjoyed my life at that point because it wasn't controlled by somebody else. I had a vision of what I wanted to do. It's like this show right now. Our vision of this show to be successful, yes, but not for the same reasons. We want to help somebody, and I know when you're doing it, it's the same way.
Yep.
You want to be able, we always say on this show, if we can help just one person each episode, then our job is done. That's what we want to do. We want to help people. And it's not like when I did the show before was a book. We talked about somebody's book. It was talking about now your life matters. Like I forgot what your other thing was. I was going to say your life matters. Your life matters. That's our slogan. Your life matters, and it's really important. Now, I want to try to wrap this up for you on this. On our website, on the link here, we're also going to have a link to your author page on Amazon. Okay, because also there you've written or co-written other books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zombified.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Zombified is a book that I read I written like 5 or 6 years before the pandemic, and all the dates that are on it actually mark the pandemic dates. Don't know how
Oh man.
it happened. Maybe I don't know how. I don't know why. Maybe I know the future. You write one book, it's 101 pages. The next book, you got the dates of the year correct for a pandemic to start. And I wrote that many moons ago, man. And it's a script. And what I wanted to do is to show unity. And people, you write a horror book, people don't look into it deep. So I tell people instead of different race, I created different creatures out of humanity. So I bring in my version of vampires, my version of gargoyles, my version of Bigfoot through zombie blood. And there's that one leader, that one guy that's the mystery person, which is the headhunter, that is the cure. And his name happens to be Caesar. And then what happens is the whole United States infected, but everything out of the United States is controlled by the government of defense, aka the GOD. So, so I try to bring in that kind of mentality where different creatures can still work together, even though with their differences and different armies and different things, and put it in together into a big apocalyptic um, Marvel DC universe kind of deal. Um, and I don't put cuss words. I don't put sex in my books. I just tell a story, and I don't have nothing against people that do that. I just decided to make it where, hey man, remember the Bela Lugosi days and the Boris Karloff
Mhm.
days and the Charlie Chaplin days, Laurel and Hardy days, all that stuff. Well, I'm putting it in like in my book series. Still got the horror, still got the gore, but just don't need to go to the offensive kind of deal.
Okay,
And
right.
All the negativity. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
the
right,
Awesome.
exactly.
obligatory breast scene, as I always call it, that you find in horror films. There has to be
Yeah,
one.
then don't get me
You
wrong.
know,
I'm working in movies, so
well,
I get
yeah,
paid to work in
I get
movies that
that.
show
No,
boobies and everything else.
yeah. But tell us about Higher Nation. You see, as you can tell by listening to him, a podcast by Santiago Cirillo is something that's really, really, it's going to be interesting. There's no question about it. Just listen to the last 25, 30 minutes here. You'll know for a fact. It's interesting. And I've watched a few of them. I have one or two of them that are on YouTube right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I went some of those last night. Trust me, I have my homework. But tell everybody about Higher Nation and even what it stands for.
So I have a thing called Hiya Nation. It's in the back of my T-shirts, and of course I do Hiya Nation hats. Um, so what happened? Hiya is the last word I said from my last attempt at suicide. I went to my big open field, and I had just talked to God. It was just me and God. That time I dealt with a lot of things traumatically. I lost my mother, and then a week or two later, my best friend, and then me coming back from all these funerals and everything. I roll up, and in the front yard, and I have a farm, so roll up in the front yard, and there's my dog suffocated to death, and I had to bury my dog right there. People thought I was just gonna lose my mind, but I went to the field and I just looked around, and I just asked God. I said, "Look, man, either you're going to take this pain away or I'm going to take it away." And in that instant, I yelled, "Hiya." Something just made me yell. That moment, I owned everything. I owned the universe. I could have go and reached out and replaced planets. I could have cured cancer. I could have done anything. I can't even explain the amount of power I had, where birds can sit and a gnat can bow down to me in my hand. But I was in peace. I had love. I had happiness.
You were plugged
And
in, man.
oh, dude, I mean, I'm telling you, bro, I could have done anything possible, man. I could have saved
The
everything.
Catholic background would say
Eh,
he had the Holy Spirit.
Right, right, right. And I love the world. I started loving it. So I yell hiya everywhere I go. It kills negativity. It opens a platform to tell my story. And like just recently in April, I decided to create Nation Entertainment, a brand
Right.
supporting other brands. I'm not greedy. I got millionaire friends, and I got all these so-called big companies that I work for, but I wanted to build it to help entrepreneurs, small businesses, people that are victims, people that are survivors, and try to create that where we bring them in from TV shows, movies, live events, and we bring them in and we also support them back. And since then, everybody yells hiya. Everybody's like, hiya, Santi, hiya. And I created a podcast. I created marketing and material. And I mean, it's just something that might be small to other people, but it has a following. And that's the great part, because the following is about making sure you know that your life is worth living, and your negativity will not break me. And yell hi-ya, and people get to tell my story, their story, and others. So yeah, man, it grows, dude.
Yeah, we'll have the links to all of that again too. It's going to be a long description, but all the links are going to be there. So that this way, you can experience this as well. As I said, I watched through a lot of it the last couple of years in the bedroom, saying, okay, Santiago again. I couldn't even, I had to refresh my brain with all of it because we haven't seen each other in a couple of years. Okay, and that's a couple of years too long. I definitely
Yeah.
have to run into you again soon. But listen, Santiago, I want to thank you so much for joining us on our show. It's a bit different from the last time we spoke to each
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
But, I truly think that your story and what you're talking about and the life that you're living is an inspiration to other people. And that's
Thank you,
so
brother.
important. I mean, people really have to be aware of that. As I said, you listen to his stuff, you buy the books and stuff, you're not going to be disappointed.
No.
Okay, not at all. So thank you, Santiago, for joining us, and I wish you plenty of luck in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so
Rock
much.
on!
Now, Dr. Nagers, let me ask you before we wrap up the show this evening. We've had a great interview with Santiago and stuff. What would you say to veterans that are listening, or anybody? Let's hold even veteran society, anyone that's suffering from PTSD. Okay, what do you recommend that they do right now?
I would recommend, honestly, I could not have said it better than Santiago did. There is nothing to be ashamed of. It feels like there is, like that's the problem. That's why we call them, mental disorders, or, that's why we treat these things, because it doesn't feel right, you know? And, I mean, I would point to him as a shining example, honestly. Here's a guy who is more than open, saying, "Hey, I'm a regular person. I struggle with PTSD. I'm not perfect, but look at him. I mean, that's amazing. He's been on some huge shows. He's out there doing his thing. And my point is that no one is holding his past experience against him. The reality is, if you want to change your life, it is entirely possible. It is just a matter of reaching out and accepting help. It doesn't matter where the help comes from. Just reach out and accept the help.
I remember he ran the gamut when he started talking about, being sexually abused and bullied and everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a shining example, like you said, of someone who says, okay, I'm going to battle this head on and I'm going to keep moving forward. And great thing is he wants to help others along the way too.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. So I just want to say, listen, to every veteran listening to this podcast, whether it's during the premiere, on Thursday evening, or whether you stumble across this later on, know this. Like we say with every other show, you are not alone.
No.
The same goes to anyone suffering from PTSD, whether you're law enforcement, first responders, as you've seen on previous episode there, a nurse, doctor, firefighter, anybody. Okay, know that there are people who care and appreciate what you do, and we want to help you get the help you deserve, respectfully and without any stigma attached to it. So, on behalf of Dr. Davis and myself and the entire Your Life Matters Show team here, we honor you, we thank you, and we stand with you. And as always, thank you for tuning into our podcast this evening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead, share it, leave a comment, or just send a link to a friend who might need it. You might even know a veteran who might need some uplifting words. They may not be suffering from PTSD, but wants to hear something uplifting. Remember, please, to hit the like button and the subscribe button. It only takes a few seconds, and it really does help the channel. So until next week, remember, this is a place where every episode's a journey into the heart of what truly matters. Your health, your experiences, the issues shaping our world, and everything that's affecting your life today. Whether you're seeking inspiration, advice, or simply a moment of reflection, we hope that this podcast will be a compass for navigating that beautiful life we all should be living. Be kind to your thoughts, be open to the truth, and above all, take care of you. Stay helpful, and remember, your story matters, your journey matters, and above all, please never forget your life matters. God bless you, and we hope to see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next week for another great episode with your host Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so, and hit the like button if you enjoyed this episode. Your help with this helps us reach a wider audience that may need our help. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you are valuable and important. Take time to cherish yourself and those around you. Never forget, your life matters.